Hello, welcome back. We're going to be looking at XLV. This is another index fund that I'm just starting to get an understanding of. So bear with me as I kind of go through all this as my initial impression of this. But XLV, so they're healthcare, and again, this is a spider fund, SPDR, and the index fund is XLV. So healthcare. If we look at the top 10 holdings, which are currently on the screen, you can see the top 10 holdings hold about 50% of this index. The biggest position is United Health Group, which is UNH, at about a little over 9%. The next one is Johnson & Johnson, a little over 8%. After those two, nothing is above 6%. We have MRK, which I think is Merck, and not sure what LLY is. This is AbbVie. Anyone else we have here? We have Pfizer. Those are the only ones I know here, but it looks like most of the holdings in this are going to be less than 3%. So it seems to be very diversified, but this one looks like it is wildly profitable. I mean, this one is the biggest incline trajectory uptrend that I've seen yet out of all the indexes. So let's just kind of break this down into our little trend lines here just to get a basis. So we're just going to pull the very bottom in 2019, and this one's going to be kind of tricky, but I'm going to try to capture as many of the lows as possible, and I want to extend it out as far as possible. So I'm really going to just grab, I feel like this is the best point of a low, and you can see it's not the best line in the early years, but it definitely captures like the mid years. So again, this is about 13, 14 years worth. I would say the first third, it seems to be split pretty evenly. The second third, we're in line, and then the fourth, or the final third, it looks like it's just crazy overvalued, but maybe not. So if we draw in another trend line where we just try to capture the tops, I mean, it is just crazy. It's crazy. So this one's, I guess I just struggle with this one only because if I draw it in here, clearly we gather the second third. Probably half of the first third and clearly the second third, but then our last third, it's way overvalued, it appears like. And to an extent, that kind of makes sense that it's now pulling back. So maybe this is the right line. Of course, the only other thing that I would say is if I drew it out like here, I don't really know if that makes sense. It clearly captures everything, but doesn't make sense with the entire trend. I'm gonna argue no, so I'll stick it with this. Try to keep it. It's almost like a headlight because it is kind of triangular shape to a degree. It's not as much parallel, but let's go into the weekly chart. We'll look at the past 3 years. So we have 2020 here on the far left and today here on the far right. You can see it's trying to pull back. The interesting thing though is it's that upper trend line seems to be acting as a support line because clearly we're seeing higher lows. I can't say we're seeing higher highs, but we're definitely seeing higher lows. So that is something to consider. So maybe if I were to draw in a 3 year a 3 year tracker, and again, maybe let's go down further. Maybe we'll just stick with here. Let's forget 2020, that disaster, and let's just draw in this new trend line that seems to be very sturdy. And I'll make this one, I don't know, yellow. I don't know how good that is to see. I can make it orange. We'll make it orange. I think I think we can all see that one pretty well. And then if I were to pick the same point and kind of, whoops, let me grab that line again. And I want to try to extend it out to today and preferably a little bit more. If we go with this, that's that's fairly parallel. It's definitely a little wider on the top half, which that's generally going to be the case, especially if I draw in the bottom line first. But the bottom line, assuming it's fairly straight in terms of hitting the mark, and then the top trend line, yeah, I mean, depending on the point you pick, I guess, like if I were to pick, say, this point instead and use, let me, this one's kind of tricky because it's so high. Maybe even if I pick like up here and draw this up, but then clearly it came down, so I don't know how much that makes sense. So I'm just gonna leave it in here just because I think that makes the most sense for now. So clearly it was overvalued, and that kind of makes sense that it would pull back. So we have two trend lines here. Either way you look at it, it's going up. And so if you look at our long-term trend line, our like decade-long trend line, it's clearly overvalued. If we look at our shorter trend line with the past 3 years in mind, we're right at the bottom of a chance to buy this. And so I guess the question is it going to go through that trend line and come back into the long-term purple lines, or is that going to act again as support and then bounce back up? So before I go any further, let's dissect it a little bit and try to just see what kind of seems like the a good time today to like buy or sell or whatever. So we'll draw in what seems to be like the low, and again I'm using kind of more favoritism towards today, the more recent times. And then if we draw in another one at the peak, so that's kind of our range right now, and this captures roughly 2 years, a little less than two years. And then if I were to look at just like a support line, it seems like we had some support here, so that might be a good time to buy. In terms of another point, we have some here, clearly here too. Maybe this is like the ultimate sell point up here. Hopefully this isn't getting too crazy with all the colors, but this is a unique one, I'll say that. And then this final one we're going to make blue. Yeah, this is kind of getting messy. But if we look at this, I would say maybe here kind of seems about to be fair, because this is very close to the fair value. It clearly acted as resistance once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. I really like the blue line where it is. And then even a couple weeks here, 1, 2, 3, 3 weeks in a row, just recently where it was there. So overall, as I kind of look at this, and I'm just going to update my spreadsheet here. So currently, it's at 126, and we'll add in the date. In terms of buying or selling, so again, this is one that very high growth. I think what's different about this one is the range. So the range here, even if we just stick to our green and red line, I mean, we're talking about $13 per share, where it could fluctuate between those two marks, possibly a few times. I mean, We saw it once, twice, three times, and now it's pulling back again. I mean, this could be, fortunately for us, it's near a buy point, and I feel like buying into something is way less riskier than selling short on something, especially where the overall trends, whether you look at it in the past 3 years or over a decade, it's clearly in an uptrend. So I think right now, I think it's at a good price. I wouldn't mind buying it. I think overall, what I would like to do, like obviously the best case scenario would be it pulls back to the bottom of the purple line, which would be like 95. But I think more realistically, especially based on the past 3 years, I think it's possible we could see 118. More likely, about 126 or 125. I mean, I would. So that's kind of what I'm saying. 125 would be the buy point for selling. For this one, I feel like it's a big enough range that I would consider selling at around 141, even though I know I marked 139. We'll stick to it, 139. And so this one, I'm actually going to say it's at a good time to buy. And again, that's based off, it's at the low point of our golden trend line. It's nearing the upper limit of our purple trend line, which I feel like I'm giving more weight to the golden trend line in this case. So we're going to factor that in, but it's very close to coming back into the purple trend line, which it could go either way in all honesty. I mean, maybe once it pulls into that purple trend line again, it might just plummet down to the bottom of it. That's very possible. You can see it happen in 2020, but again, that was a very fluke type situation. I don't think that's going to happen in all honesty. But and then again, if we just look at our horizontal lines, it's below fair value, which we marked at 132, and it's very close, just $1 off of our buy point. So I think this is close enough that I'd be willing to make a purchase in this. Probably add a few on this one, but that's how I'm seeing it. So let me know what your thoughts are. But here we go. Here's the healthcare one. You can see it's currently at 126. I marked a buy point of 125, which is close enough for me that I would buy into this one today. And then the sell point is at 139. But again, because this one seems to be at a long-term uptrend for the more recent 2 or 3 years trend, and also for about 13 years it's been that way, I think if I buy in, I probably won't sell. Like I would probably hold this one for many years to come and just continue to ride it and add into it as time passes. Uh, I think the one last thing that I want to look at, if we go back to the quarterly chart, hypothetically, if we bought this one at a big drop in 2020, it would have been about 85, and then today it's at about 125. So that's about 33% return in that let's see, 2-ish years window, 2.5 years. What are we looking at? 2020. Okay, about 3 years actually. So 3 years, you'd make about 30% return. That's decent. I think the average for the market is something like 8% return annually, something like that. So you'd be beating the overall market. So that's a plus. Okay, I I definitely think this one is a solid pick to hold long term. And so if we just pull up our tracker again, that's how I see it. I will probably add this one uh, at some point this week, if not tomorrow. And I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.